What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope you're doing well. Uh, Obviously, as you all know, it's Saturday morning. Usually don't record on weekends, but I want to get something out to you guys. I know I didn't record yesterday, and a lot happened, and we got the NFL playoffs that are starting in a few hours later on today. So I want to get a podcast episode out before. So Monday didn't turn into this huge marathon because I don't usually like to do that if no one's calling into the show, and I don't usually take call-ins on Mondays during football season at least. So let's get started with the big move that happened yesterday. The Los Angeles Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker to a 4-year deal worth $240 million. That is $60 million a year, with two opt-outs after year two and year three. $30 million is going to be deferred, and they outbid the New York Mets, who offered 4 years for $220 million. So Mets come up just short on their offer, and apparently the Blue Jays had a long-term offer out for him as well. So Dodgers add another premier player, Kyle Tucker. Was hurt a bit last year, but 136 games, hit 266, 22 home runs, 73 RBIs. He had an OPS of 841, 377 on base. What wasn't also in the first half of the year was in the MVP conversation. Struggled mightily down the stretch. Had some injuries he was trying to play through. Eventually got shut down at the end of the season. Didn't play in the postseason. Year before that, in Houston, last year in Houston, injuries limited him to 78 games. And he ended up hitting 289, 23 homers, 49 RBI, which is still an incredible mark in 78 games. OPS almost 1,993. But you look at the previous three seasons that he was healthy. In 21, with Houston, which was his breakout year, 294, 30 homers, 92 RBIs, 917 OPS, 359 on base. In 22, at 257, 30 homers, 107 RBI, 808 OPS. So slight down year for him. But 23, hit 284 with 29 home runs, 112 RBI, which led the league. Finished fifth in MVP voting. 369 on base, 5-17 slugging, 886 OPS. So he is one of the best players in baseball, one of the best outfield bats out there. You know, Dodgers add him. They already have Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Will Smith and Max Muncy. Now you add Kyle Tucker, plus Dyson Sinley rotation. They already have Edwin Diaz, one of the league's best closers, to help out your bullpen. And look, I don't have a single problem with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, I'm not a fan of them. I don't want them to win. You know, obviously playing the Mets and stuff like that. But, you know, they're playing within the rules. The rules need to be changed? Probably. I think it's very fair to say. But they're not breaking any rules. Yes, their payroll is $413 million, and they're gonna probably pay maybe close to $200 million in luxury tax penalties. Last year they paid $170 million in luxury tax penalties. Half the league didn't even have $107 million payroll last year. That's what they paid in luxury tax. And they have over $2 billion on their payroll, including deferrals, which is the most in baseball, but they're allowed to do that. There's nothing anybody can do. However, I don't know if we're going to have a baseball season in 2027. There's not me crying because I'm butthurt by the Dodgers. That is me genuinely analyzing the situation. I genuinely think we will not play baseball in 2027. People are very upset about this. The Dodgers, I mean, they're back-to-back World Series champions. You know, they signed Ohtani 2 years ago for $700 million, made other moves. Last year, coming off a World Series win, spent, $160 or $180 million on Blake Snell. They spent $72 million on Tamara Scott. Granted, that didn't really work out for them. Made all these other moves. And coming off a second straight World Series championship, you paid Kyle Tucker, one of the premier outfield bats in baseball, $60 million a year. You signed the National League's best reliever, Edwin Diaz, to a big 3-year contract. You made some big moves. You know, the New York Yankees got clotheslined in the League Division Series. They've done nothing. They must even make the playoffs last year. They haven't done a whole lot. They've actually lost more pieces than they've gained. The Boston Red Sox last year, even with the Rafael Devers trade, made the playoffs. They've done nothing outside of signing Ranger Suarez. They did not re-sign Alex Bregman. Then outside a couple of trades, have done really nothing on the free agent market. So, uh, Dodgers won back-to-back World Series, and they're signed to the premier players in the sport. I mean, look, that's a great organization. They do everything right, but something needs to be done. We gotta figure out a way to kind of uh balance the difference between the big markets. I hate the big market and small market terms, to be honest, but teams like the Dodgers and the Mets simply have more money in the bank than a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, like Cincinnati Reds, like the Miami Marlins, even the Milwaukee Brewers, who are good every year winning about 90 games and make the playoffs every single season. But you know, like people say, like, oh, everyone can do what the Dodgers are doing. Not everyone can. That's just a fact. Like, you look at the Mets. Steve Cohen's worth $21 billion. The Dodgers ownership group, the group together is worth like $450 billion. Like a team like the Brewers, who are a very good baseball club. I think Pat Murphy's a great manager. They have a really strong front office. Their ownership doesn't spend a whole lot of money, but they are a very stable ownership group. They put solid baseball clubs on the field. Every year they seem to make the playoffs, even if they lose. A few years ago, David Stearns left and took the Mets GM job. That's president of baseball operations job. Their manager council took the same position for a division rival. Also, a bunch of big pieces, and they still went out there and made the playoffs. I think even won their own division. They do it every year, but something needs to be done, and I think this will end up leading to a lockout. But speaking of the New York Mets, they make a big move. They signed former Blue Jays infielder Bo Bichette to a 3-year deal worth $126 million. He can opt out after the first 2 years, so pretty much the same contract that Alex Bregman got. It's $6 million more total. 3-year deal. He can opt out after the first 2 years if he would like to. I think this is a good deal for the Mets. A little bit of a desperate move. I mean, they're paying him $42 million a year. That's a pretty big number for him. That being said, he's one of the best hitters in all of baseball. Last year hit 312, 18 homers, almost 100 RBIs, 840 OPS, and he got hurt for the rest of the regular season starting on September 7th, and he came back in the World Series and hit over 300. He's going to play third base, which he already hasn't played in major leagues. And he's not a great defender, especially at shortstop, but and considering Davidson was talking a lot about improving their run prevention, the stupid term that he uses. I'm not sure how that does that. And you so much what's going on the first base. Do you DH B? Do you DH Polanco? Do you try Brett Beatty or Jorge Polanco at first base? That's what probably they're going to have to do. What happened to Mark Vientos? But this team is desperate. They needed the bat, and they still need another bat in the outfield. So I think bringing in Bo Bichette, it's a short-term deal. If things do go south or you want to move on, he'll probably opt out. I mean, if things go well, he probably opts out. He's only 27. He can still get a long-term deal next year. Unless he really like the Mets have to offer. Maybe he thinks, I can do a little better. Maybe he'll opt in. But Mets signed Bo Bichette. This comes out nowhere. I mean, going into the offseason, I think we all thought he'd re-sign in Toronto. He looked happy there. Just went to the World Series. But this, deal never got done, and eventually, looked less and less likely Toronto was going to sign him. Appeared they were more than on Kyle talking to Bo Bichette, and then Philadelphia was talking to him. Boston had talked to him. The Yankees were interested in him. And apparently, the Phillies offered him 7 years, $200 million, and were expecting them to take that deal. But last minute, I guess maybe Thursday night into Friday, the Mets swooped in with this offer and kind of stole him from the Phillies. I'm sure that may play into it too. Maybe Steve Cohen and the Mets heard, the Phillies are about to sign this guy, and they're like, we can't let him go to the Phillies. One thing if he re-signs with Toronto or even signs with the New York Yankees, as much as it is a rivalry in New York, they don't really play the Yankees a whole lot. It's not that big of a deal if he were to sign with the New York Yankees, from the Mets' perspective. But they could not let him go to Philadelphia, so they sign him so a division rival doesn't get him. But their lineup without him was horrendous. Was honestly borderline like bottom 10 in the league. With him, still is lacking. You're counting on a lot of younger players to really step up, like Francisco Alvarez. Need him to stay healthy. Carson Bench possibly starting the opening day roster. He's barely played above Double-A. Tyrone Taylor about to give you something offensively. But now you add Bo, At least the first part of the lineup looks pretty good. They're going to need a bat. Like if they can try and steal Cody Bellinger from the Yankees, that would put them in the best position possible. They could actually put out a pretty decent lineup. They already just should have re-signed Pete Alonso to make things a lot simpler. But Bo Bichette is the Mets, and overall, I think this is a good deal for the Mets. And a couple other moves that happened. The Phillies re-signed JT Realmuto, 3 years, $45 million. He's older, but still a solid player, still a solid catcher. He re-signs there. And the Twins just signed Victor Caratini. Not just signed, it happened yesterday, but broke last night. They signed Victor Caratini. He's a veteran catcher, been around the league for a while. I was with the Cubs for a very long time. He was in Milwaukee briefly, and now he's going to be headed to, he's in Houston to start his career as well, to Minnesota on a 2-year deal. And the last move was a trade. It was a 3-team trade. Angels, Reds, and Rays all were involved in this move. Angels get Josh Lau from the Tampa Bay Rays. Rays acquire Gavin Lux from the Reds. Also get a minor league pitcher in Chris Clark. He's a throw-in. He had a year of almost 6 in AAA last year. And the Reds get a reliever, Brock Burke from Tampa. Lau's a solid addition to the Angels. Only going to be 28 next year. Last year hit 220, 11 homers, 40 RBIs. His best year of his career was in 2023 with Tampa, where he spent his whole 5-year career, where he hit 292, 20 homers, 83 RBIs, 835 OPS. Has not been able to replicate that the last 2 seasons. In 24, hit just 241, 10 homers, 34 RBIs in 106 games, 693 OPS. Last year hit 220, 11 homers, 40 RBIs, 650 OPS. If nothing else, he's a guy who can play multiple different positions, has some power. Maybe he'll be a power bat on the bench. But since he's going to Cincinnati, he may play every day for them because they have a pretty weak lineup. Very young team over there at Cincinnati. Rays get Gavin Lux. Lux came up back in 2019 with the Dodgers when he was 21 years old. Was a top 3 prospect in all of baseball. Has never really blossomed, never really been healthy, especially in the first part of his career. But has put together a couple of half-decent seasons. His last year with Dodgers, coming off the injury in 2024, 139 games 2 years ago, hit 251, 10 homers, 50 RBIs, 703 OPS. Last year in Cincinnati, 140 games, hit 269, 5 homers, 53 RBIs, 724 OPS. Never became the shortstop we all thought he was going to be. He's an okay second baseman, has played a little bit of outfield. And the bat never really took off like we thought it was going to as well. But he's a solid infielder to have on your team. He can play, second, third, and shortstop. He's a half-decent hitter who can handle himself in the field. He's an average player. Chris Clark's also in that deal. And the Reds get Brock Burke, who last year had the best year of his career, or second best year of his career. His best year of his career was in Texas in 2022, when a 1.97 ERA in 52 games across 82 in a third. He struggled for a few seasons, was hardly even a major league level pitcher. But last year, in 69 games with the Angels, had a 3.36 ERA and 61 2/3. He had 52 strikeouts against 18 walks. And that is a solid piece for the Reds to pick up, as their bullpen, a lot of blown saves last year. They add Brock Burke to the mix. A couple of college quarterback news. Dante Moore is returning to Oregon. I think this is the right move for him. He really struggled in the college football playoff. Even the blowout went over Texas Tech, he didn't look very good. He looked absolutely horrendous against Indiana. I think Dante Moore has a lot of talent. Could be a very good future NFL quarterback, but he's not ready yet. Interesting how that works out, because Dylan Raiola from Nebraska, his Mahomes cringe aside, he is a pretty good quarterback. He just transferred to Oregon from Nebraska. So I don't know how that's going to shake out, but Dante Moore is returning to Oregon. He was very good this year, numbers-wise, if whatever that's worth. He had over 3,500 passing yards, 30 touchdowns. I guess 10 interceptions, completed almost 72% of his passes. He ran for 156 yards and 2 scores. So he's got a lot of work to do, but there is something there. He's got some talent. Obviously, he started at UCLA a couple years ago. This was first full gig with Oregon. Overall, I thought he played well, but just a little bit inconsistent. Needs to get better, but he's still young. Still considered a sophomore, so he's got, at least 2 years of eligibility left. And he's still very young. So he will now get to go back to school and really work on something, which I think is the right move. And I'm very happy the Jets did not take him. Will not be able to take him a second overall. They obviously physically can't because he's going back to school. That would have probably been Zach Wilson 2.0, but he's returning to Oregon. And Duke quarterback Darian Mensah, it was reported not too long ago that he had signed a 2-year NIL deal to return to a Duke Blue Devils as their quarterback, but he's now entering the portal. We saw this with, what's his name, Damon Jones, whatever his name is, at Washington. He had agreed to re-sign a 1-year NIL deal with Washington to return as their starter. Then all of a sudden, he entered the portal. His agent released a statement saying that, he was leaving him, and then all of a sudden he ended up going back. We have to have some control of this portal, and the NCAA has to, get a grip of this. Like, this can't happen. Like, you can't sign a contract and then try and see if you want to sign somewhere else. Like, that should not be allowed. Someone has to get a hold of that. That's terrible. That's terrible. Maybe he ends up still going back, still sticking with a 2-year deal with Duke, but just, I don't even know how to explain this. I don't even know what the right terminology is for this crap. But Darian Mensah is entering the portal even after he signed a 2-year deal. Makes no sense. And a couple of NFL coaching news before I give you my national championship pick, and then we're going to close this thing out. The Jets interviewed 8 candidates for their defensive coordinator opening. Dolphins defensive backs coach Matt Arujo, Browns safeties coach Prem Banda, the Packers defensive line coach DeMarcus Covington, their interim defensive coordinator the last 2 weeks of the season after Steve Wilks was fired, Chris Harris. He was a corner for the Denver Broncos for a long time, was a very good NFL player. He was their interim defensive coordinator. I think it was their D-backs coach before getting the promotion. Vikings defensive backs coach Durante Jones, the Broncos pass game coordinator Jim Leonard, Wink Martindale, who is currently the Michigan defensive coordinator. He was. I don't believe new coach Kyle Whittingham kept him on his staff. I think he ended up hiring somebody else. And then Lions defensive assistant Jim O'Neill. So Wink, to me, should be the leading candidate for this job. He's a very good defensive coordinator. He was with the Ravens for a while as a defensive coordinator, was very good there. Obviously, he was at Michigan recently, did a very good job. Was briefly with the Giants, did a good job. Only reason he wasn't even fired, he just left because he clashed with Brian Daboll. I think a lot of that was on Brian Daboll. He's a very good defensive coordinator, loves to blitz. He should be the favorite. I think Jim Leonard will be a good hire because a former Jet, was a solid player for the New York Jets as a safety, and he was a assistant coach at Wisconsin for a while. He's the Broncos pass game coordinator and D-backs coach. He's done a good job. I think he's ready to be a defensive coordinator. I think that would be a decent hire. Durante Jones would probably be a decent hire, the Vikings defensive backs coach. Other than that, like Covington, he's not a bad D-line coach, and I don't think he did a terrible job. However, how hard is his job when, besides the last month of the year, his D-line featured Micah Parsons? Not for nothing, as soon as he got hurt, the D-line looked a lot worse. Like, this guy Banner, the Browns safeties coach, not sure I love. I want to hire anyone from the Dolphins defensive staff. Chris Harris doesn't deserve the full-time job. And Lions defense, which did have some injury, but they were still horrible all season. I don't want Jim O'Neill as the defensive coordinator. So hopefully it's Wink Martindale or Jim Leonard or maybe Durante Jones. And the Bucs are interviewing Mike McDaniel for their open offensive coordinator. Had a lot of turnover at that position the last few years. That Dave Canales leaves to be the head coach in Carolina. Then you bring in Liam Cohen from Kentucky, and he ends up leaving for the Jacksonville head coach job. And then you bring in somebody else, Josh Grizzly, who I think you promote. He gets fired. And now you're looking for an opening to Mike McDaniel. Not a very good head coach, but he is a great offensive coordinator. I think that'll be a great hire for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And to close this thing out, national championship is Monday night at 7:30 on ESPN. Indiana, number 1 Indiana against number 10 Miami. I'm going to take Indiana in this game. I do think they will cover the 8.5 points. Miami's a very good team. They can run the football. They got a great offensive line. They have an excellent defense, really dangerous front, but Indiana's just too good. Fernando Mendoza is a dog. They can run the football. Mark Cooper's a great receiver. They have a great offensive line of their own. Their defense is fantastic. They have a great pass rush. And I think they will be able to get some pressure on Carson back. They'll make him make some mistakes. And I think Indiana will win this game. For a score prediction, I will say they win. I'll say 34-21 Indiana beats Miami. All right. That's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, so long. Have a great day.